Zayeva is a licensed counselor and the founder of the Whitestone Center, where she is dedicated to exploring paths of wellness through radical compassion and a client's own high, clear wisdom. She offers intuitive counseling, hypnotherapy, and her specialty, neurofeedback, that is brainwave training. So that's what's currently going on. Who knows what she'll be doing in the coming years. This woman, when the rest of us are looking for a place to rest, is launching businesses, heading off to some place for deep training that keeps expanding her ability to bring forth the therapies and the help and the wisdom that this community needs and the world needs. If it wasn't for just feeling like I'm running to kind of keep up with her, I'm just amazed, and I'm so grateful to have you be part of our community, and what you do here is such an inspiration to me. Thank you so much. So Zayeva's talk today is called The Guiding Light. Please help me welcome her. Hold it until it lights up. There you go. You got it. There you go.
Very nice to have my family here. Kelly and I have met. It's very nice to have all of you here. Here's the thing. When you learn something new, when you find something you've lost, when you discover a color that you didn't realize you really liked and people said, wow, that's a great color on you. All those things make a difference in your brain. They release a chemical that releases dopamine, which we know is, we hear about that. Sometimes we hear about that and the negative, like, oh, if you don't have enough dopamine, you have some kind of an illness. So what happens when you hear something that you really didn't want to hear? What happens to you then? And it really depends on your practice. If you take it as something that is an opposite of what you want, there is a way to look at opposites as offering us an opportunity to grow. Sometimes that growth is really difficult. Some of the things that were mentioned in the Joys and Concerns, and about Rolf, and those are places where we want to say no. And I don't want to hear that. I don't want to know that. But there are places from which we grow. And when Peg Rubin was here, and Chris and I had a time to look at her work, but we only had 4 weeks. It was like, we hardly got started. One of the things she talks about is the blessings of opposites. So I'm going to offer you some opposites today. And some of them may feel like I'm saying there is no Santa Claus, but I'm not saying that. I'm going to do my very best to keep this within 20 minutes. So we'll see. So let me tell you that the title of my talk morphed several times. It's one thing in my calendar. It was another thing when I first gave it to you, Janelle. Then it was another thing. So it's called The Guiding Light. Well, I woke up one morning with The Guiding Light is your talk. What? hearing loss, but not necessarily for spirit. So I listen. That's my thing now. I've decided that Hanukkah, the word Hanukkah means rededication. I am dedicating myself to listening to Spirit and believing what I hear. But it was like, and then I remembered, when I was 10, I had something that they called glandular fever, and I was in bed for 3 months. Now that might be what mono is. I don't know. But I had a little bedroom. Actually, it was the size of a closet, because it really was a closet, and it had a window, which was great. I lived in San Jose, California. I had enough room for a twin bed and a little nightstand. And I had a radio, because at that time, that was 1945. So I listened to the radio every day, and there were soap operas. Now, interesting, do you know where this word soap opera came from? Procter & Gamble sponsored these little programs, and so we called them soap operas. That's one of the new things I found out. I love this program called The Guiding Light. It's about the radio in the program. So I decided, of course, now we have Google and internet, So I went on the internet and I found out that there was a woman named Erna who went a path of being involved sexually as a young person, got pregnant, her baby was stillborn. She found a minister that she really appreciated, and that minister's sermons she started making notations of. Can you imagine where this is going? She decided to write the script for A Guiding Light. And I just found this out. For 3 months, I listened to the minister's sermons because that's what made each program. So I was indoctrinated for 3 months as a 10-year-old in the brotherhood of man, because that was the minister's specialty. So that was the longest running soap opera ever. And you can still find it because they made, first of all, there was a book. You can find the book if you want to pay $60, $70 for it, because it's one of those rare books. It became a television program. You can find it if you have that level of TV. It just, I was just absolutely stunned that that's what I did at 10. And that it definitely began to have an impact, I guess, because of the things that I'm drawn to. So, I also said, when you and I had lunch together at the time of my birthday, when you said, you're going to talk about Hanukkah, I said, yes, hello darkness, my old friend. And that just was one of those things that just went pop. It just came out. So I mentioned to people that I'm going to do this talk, and Chris Beer lent me a wonderful book called My Glorious Brothers. Well, this is an author who, I'm not sure what his background. is or was, but that book was first published in the 40s, which is another interesting, that book was published about the time that I was listening to The Guiding Light. I'm going, oh my God, this talk. This talk is going to encompass a lot of things. So, I'm reading about the battle. And the battle for Judea is a battle of 30 years. Fighting forces on either side of this tiny little place where Jerusalem is. And it's a fierce, bloody battle in which maybe, I don't know, tens of thousands of people died in this battle. And I asked myself over the years, and I don't know, Nikki, about your take as a child in our house where, we have 8 days of Hanukkah because the lamp, the oil in the lamp, supposedly was going to last one night, and that's an eternal light. Hanukkah is a rededication, being able to cleanse a sacred area, and so the way we always practiced was 8 days. The oil lasted 8 days. Well, still I thought, why? We're lighting candles, so many people died. It's a strange holiday to honor what? Oil. And the way it kind of came, well, what are we going to do? What kind of food are we going to have? So we have food cooked in oil. That never, ever came in and said, this is right. Well, the situation is that the battle was so awful that the people who, I call them scribes. In Judaism, we have the 5 books of Moses. That's the Old Testament. That's a Jewish compilation of how the early writers wanted to portray the beginning of our world. Well, in the Christian faith, the Old Testament is written in a way that helps us see that there's going to be a Messiah. It's directed in that way. It isn't the same as with Judaism. And the book of Maccabees doesn't show up anywhere in a religious text unless you read the commentary. The thing about being Jewish is you're supposed to question everything. You're supposed to somehow not believe, be skeptical. And so in the margins of everything is more and more and more and more. Well, some of the people who wondered what to do about this dichotomy of so many people dying and oil that lasted 8 days seemed to be one of the answers. So it's actually a myth. It wasn't 8 days. Well, coincidentally with this, I call up my friend, who's a wonderful artist, and I say, Eve, I want to commission you to make a menorah. I'm looking on the internet, and the menorahs are not anything I want. So you went ahead with the commission with a caveat that you might not get it done by today. So I said, okay, I can deal with that. That was before I started working on this. And so, and coincidentally, by the way, with all of this is, I somehow woke up one day and said, wow, I'm in the middle of a 30-year piece of my life here. 15 years, Dave already mentioned, Michael passed away 15 years ago. Wow. I'm going to be a 3-digit in the next 15 years. That was stunning. I don't know anybody in my friendship circle that's a 3-digit. So, it's like, all of this is happening while I'm working on what do I dedicate myself to? Well, the truth is that in order to deal with all of the difficulties about what are we going to do with this massacre and this oil, is that, well, we're going to say the one candle we can count on is not part of the 8. And guess what Eve made? So if you would come up and light this. And Eve made this without my talking to her about anything. So, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu ner shel Hanukkah. The one candle we can count on. It isn't allied with anything that happened that took lives. It's an eternal light. So, how are we going to get to the experience of what we can learn from this is that we got to clean up the past. And in order to clean up the past, we have to look differently. Now, I wrote that little book about the love poem book, and in it, there was this T-shirt about, this thing written on it, and the first time I saw that was in Brazil, with a man wearing this T-shirt. So, yes, 5 minutes. Wow. Okay, I gotta run through this story. Okay, well, the deal is that we can change some things. So here's the story. I've got to read a few things from it. So, let me find what I need. I may go a few minutes over, but not much. All right, so 2 people that I relied on for this talk. One of them is Gershon Winkler, who used to be in Missoula a couple of times a year, and who was a rabbi that traveled with David Carson, who wrote the medicine cards, which gives you a little idea about a rabbi and the medicine cards, because he's a shaman. So he told a story that I'll try to summarize, but it's taken me until last night to really totally understand it. So there's a man who likes to be in the wilderness and likes to walk, just like you told me, except he's a spiritual guy, maybe a rabbi. And so he's walking and he gets lost. And it's desert and he doesn't have his water bottle. So he sees a man on a camel and leading the camel, and he says, "Hey, do you know where there's some water?" And the man says, "Well," and he reaches down, and of course it's desert, and he picks up sand, and he lets the sand sift through his fingers, and he says, "Yeah, come on, I'll show you." And he says, "Oh, great, but what are you doing with the sand?" And he said, "Well, you know, in our learning, in our scriptures and whatever, we know, ask the earth." So I asked the sand, "Where's the water?" So the sand told me, so we're going to where the water is. So they find the water, and they get the water, and they having a little time with some bread and water, and then the man on the camel is a Bedouin, and he says, "Come on, I've got to show you something." So he says, "I want to take you to this graveyard where our ancestors, that's a graveyard for our ancestors." And he says, "Okay." And so there's the strange, like huge, gigantic corpses with clothing, and they're so big that they're now on the camel. They can ride the camel underneath a propped up leg of one of the ancestors. And of course these ancestors are clothed because nothing deteriorates in the sand in the desert. So the traveler sees the garments and he wants a little piece of garment. So he takes this knife and he cuts a little piece of garment off. As he does that, the camel stops. And so the Bedouin says, "Did you take something?" And he says, "Well, yeah, it's this little piece of fabric. It's just a little piece." And he said, "You can't have that. That belongs to the ancestors. The ancestors want to give you something, they give you something, but you don't take it." And in fact, it's in the scriptures that the one who does that is paralyzed. So you have to be, you can't do that. And so the traveler goes, "Yeah, but it has this weaving, and I need that weaving because it helps us understand how to really make prayer shawls." And he says, "You don't get it. The past belongs in the past. And if you start messing with that, and you weren't given that, then you won't be able to walk. You will be paralyzed. You will be stuck there." That's the teaching. And no matter how much we want to hold on to the past and somehow drag it into the present because we think that's workable, we get stuck. So you can see, as I wrap this up, how this might be if you're going to move ahead now. I believe Spirit will guide you. I believe you can listen. I believe you're not alone.